PC Expert Amateur, and welcome to the next installment of my series on choosing PC fans. This particular one is going to be talking about the differences between the power cords that use either 2, 3, or 4 pins. I'm not going to be talking about USB, which is different. I'm not going to talk about Molex D or SATA as well, because those also all function differently. Now, I will point out that if you need to control your fans or want to control your fans, if you don't buy something that plugs into either the motherboard or USB, you will have to have some kind of external control like a remote control. Now, there are basically 3 types of power connectors that fall into the category that I'm working on right now, which is the DC and PWM fans. There are 2 pins, 3 pins, both of which are called DC fans, and they're both controlled by voltage. The difference between the 2 pin and the 3 pin is the third pin for this one is, third pin, right? The third pin for this one is that is a tachometer signal or a speed signal. So the motherboard can actually use that tachometer signal to vary the speed of the fan. Whereas with the 2 pin one, there is no control whatsoever. And oftentimes you may see in the description for a fan that it says that it's a 2 pin or a 3 pin or a 4 pin. If it doesn't say the word PWM, but it says 4 pin, that does not mean it's PWM, because they will sometimes sell fans that have a Molex connector, for example, to the power supply that are clearly not going to be PWM, because the power supply doesn't have the ability to do PWM for fans. It's not built that way. Now, maybe there are power supplies out there that have special ports where you can plug in a Molex cable from there to the fan, and it is designed for PWM specifically, but I am not aware of whether such power supplies exist. So just very briefly, Molex D is a design. Okay, so it looks kind of like a D. So if you look at this, you can see that the corners on this side, corners on this side are a bit shaved off. So it forms a D, so it cannot be inserted incorrectly. I do not like Molex D. The pins or the holes there, they actually wiggle around. So when you're trying to connect this and you're trying to connect the male one that has the pins that go into those holes, they often become misaligned, and that can cause not particular on this particular design because they've got the wires going through this way, but when the wires just go straight through, because this is actually a double for daisy chaining, so you've got the female on that side and the male on this side, but when it's only female on this side and there's no male in the back, the wires usually go straight through the back. So when you're trying to plug it in and they're misaligned, the pins will start moving backwards, and you can actually pop them out of the housing. You can put them back; it's not a problem, but it's very annoying. So you can see also that this has 2 pins in it, or holes, I should say, but there are the pins, and that means that this is a straight DC. You have no control over it whatsoever. The best you could hope for would be to find a fan controller that might be able to vary the voltage, and it may or may not work. So this is a Molex. It also has a 3-pin connector, and that's the DC with the tachometer signal. So again, when you're looking at fans, looking at the description, if you see that it says 2-pin or 4-pin or 3-pin, you should always try to verify by looking at the pictures and the text what kind of connector it actually is. So you don't get one that you are going to maybe not want to use because it's, for example, Molex D. You can, of course, get an adapter so they can go from Molex D to a 2-pin or a 3-pin header like that one there. So it can convert this to this so that you can connect it to the header instead of the power supply. So that is an option for you if you end up with a Molex D connector. And not all fans that have Molex connectors will have one of the other connectors like this kind, or 2 or 3 or 4 pins. So you don't know for sure, and they're not expensive to get the adapters. You should be able to get them at computer stores. You should be able to order them online very cheaply. I certainly wouldn't pay more than a couple of bucks for one. Also, alternatively, you could buy some of these plugs and then cut the Molex D off and attach that plug. That would be another option for you. You might have to do a little bit of soldering for that, though. Right. Let's see. One of the benefits, however, of Molex D is you can daisy chain a large number of these together. So you'll end up with a long string of them just connected like that. And that does provide some advantage, but I really don't care for Molex. Let's see. So then we, again, so the 2-pin DC is controlled by voltage, as is the 3-pin. But the 3-pin also has the tachometer signal. Now the 4-pin has the 4th pin, which is for direct control of the speed by pulsing the electricity to maintain a specific speed. So sometimes if you listen, if it's not, it seems like you can hear it varying. Yeah, that's exactly, it's pulse. PWM is pulse width modulation. So they're changing how it's changing how often it's sending the electricity. Basically, I mean, that's the simple way to think about it. If knowing and changing the speed of the fan is important, the 3rd pin on the 3-pin version definitely makes a difference. And that pin also exists on the PWM version, of course. So you will discover, however, that just because a fan is 3-pin or 4-pin, that does not mean they all start at the same speed and stop at the same speed. Even if you just have a kill switch, a power switch that just shuts off the electricity abruptly, that does not guarantee or starts electricity immediately. It doesn't guarantee how many amps, I guess you could say, or watts are required to actually get it moving. So some can start at a very low level, and others, they'll kind of wiggle a little bit or stay still, and it'll be a much higher level before they actually start moving around. And so every fan manufacturer has, different specifications, and sometimes from one fan to the next, it's also going to be different. Cheaper quality means a reduced range of control at the low end. So it may only start at 1,000 and only go, or it may only start at its maximum, 1,000 RPMs, or it may only offer the maximum speed, even though you've got the tachometer signal and stuff like that. It's rare, but it can possibly happen depending on how they designed it. If they actually designed it to allow for other voltages than the maximum. Let's see. Do keep in mind some hubs and controllers claim to be PWM, but only have 3 pins and thus aren't really PWM. And I believe it was Thermaltake. They had several hubs and controllers, and every one that I looked at was a 3-pin connector. And I contacted them and said, hey, what's going on here? You say it's PWM, but it's only got, oh, well, you don't need the last one. Yes, you do need the last one. You can't call it PWM if it doesn't have the 4th signal wire. And they're not the only one. I was doing some research and I came across a whole bunch of different brands selling hubs and controllers, and some of them claimed it was PWM when it wasn't. Some of them didn't claim it was PWM, however. So you have to be careful about that. And then some fans will offer what's called 0 RPM, where the fan will stop spinning. Now, this is for PWM only. To save electricity. When the temperature is low enough, it'll just stop completely. And you can adjust that, of course, through the fan curve that you create in BIOS or in software. Finally, do keep in mind that although I've talked about these different kind of connectors, some companies like Corsair, Asia Horse, and Leon Lee have moved towards using proprietary connectors like JST connectors to force customers to stick with them. Personally, I do not like this, and unless you are willing to replace the plugs and not use their hubs, you should avoid such products despite the advantages some may offer, unless you plan to pay the extra cost of only buying their brand, because a lot of, like, Leon Lee and Corsair are among the more expensive brands, so you're going to be paying a premium to be locked into their ecosystem, which I think is not acceptable. And sometimes that extra cost can be quite large. There are fans out there that are over $100 each. And I'm not even talking about commercial fans. I'm just talking about consumer fans. Proprietary connectors may have 5 or more pins or holes, and you'll have to have a hub, connector, repeater, or node with the same connector to use those fans. Generally, if you buy a single fan with a proprietary connector, it won't come with a hub, but that's not always true. But generally, if it's a single fan, they'll usually sell the hub or whatever in a multi-pack, but single packs often they don't, because I don't really know if they've just decided, well, maybe somebody needs to add more on, so we'll sell single packs that don't have that, so they can, because oftentimes they'll sell like in a pack of 3, and then they'll send you a hub that has 8 ports in it. And so that allows you to add more of their proprietary plug fans to the hub. So if they sell it as a single pack, then they don't have the extra expense, and you don't have the extra expense of having yet another hub. JST connectors, like I said, it's just one of the types, and they're usually 6-pin. And just so you know what I'm talking about, this is an example of a non-standard connector. So you can see that this one has got 6 holes there for the pins. Oh, I hate it when it's focusing on my face instead of... Got to turn that setting off, but I keep forgetting. So you can see that there are 6 holes there, right? And then you have to have a connector or a hub like this one that has the 6-pin ports. And it may, if it's got LEDs like this fan does. This is an Asia Horse Magic C, which is not an impressive fan at all. But what this does is it combines the PWM or DC and the lighting control into one cable. So there are, the benefit then of these fans that have proprietary cables is, generally speaking, it'll only be one fan that you have to, one fan cable that you have to plug in, which means for those of you who are like really obsessed with less cable mess, it's definitely an option. So you can keep that in mind. You can, if you know how to do it, you can actually rewire fans that have proprietary connectors, but you will have to figure out a way for the ones, the wires that actually are serving a dual function for both the fan and the lighting. You have to figure out a way to share that particular wire's power to both the fan and the lighting on the fan. So you're probably wondering what's best. Well, honestly, aside from my recommendation to stay away from Molex D, I mean, if you're really on a tight budget and you have a Molex D cable for your power supply, then yeah, go ahead, get that one. However, if you just need fans and you are again on a budget, you're just as likely to have the same results from a 2-pin or a 3-pin fan. And whether it's Molex 2-pin or 3-pin, it's generally going to be less expensive. Don't worry about lighting. In Lighting isn't going to improve the performance of your computer in any way, shape, or form. And depending on what kind of fan you buy, it might, or even like RGB and SSDs and all that stuff, depending on how the power situation is designed, having RGBs on, or sorry, LEDs on things may actually decrease the performance. So I guess you don't have to get PWM. And I would say that if you want to have some variability in the speed, which means it's not always going to be running at full blast. And there are some fans that are extremely noisy when they run at full blast. Sometimes it's just because they are fans that run at a very high RPM, but sometimes it's the design of the blades that cause them to be very, very noisy. It can also be because of the bearings and other factors. So if you are if you don't care about noise, any of them are fine. If you want a computer or fan that you have some degree of control of, but you want, but you and or you don't want a lot of noise all the time, and you're saving money, the 3-pin would be a good choice. If you have extra money to spend, then I would go for the 4-pin PWM. But again, keeping in mind that if you are buying fans that include LEDs that are powered off of that cable, the power cable, instead of having a separate cable like RGB fans and ARGB fans, then you are going to have a fan that does not perform as well as, most likely, the non-LED variation of that fan. So Deepcool FC 120 versus Deepcool FK 120. The FC has got LEDs on it. The FK has not got LEDs, and according to Deepcool itself, the FK performs better than the FC, even though they're identical aside from the LEDs. Do you need 0 RPM? If you especially now, another consideration is, are you living in an area or a country perhaps where electricity costs a lot of money? Like I've heard that in Europe, electricity is very, very expensive. So if you are trying to save money on electricity, I would suggest that you want to get a 4-pin PWM with 0 RPMs. And the second choice would be the 3-pin DC. Because at least there's some variability, because the 2-pin, whether it's Molex or the standard plug, is going to eat up way more electricity because it's always going to be at maximum speed. However, there is a caveat to that, and that is that if you look around, you can find straight 2-pin DC fans that use less electricity than a 3-pin or 4-pin. And so theoretically, depending on the maximum usage of the 3-pin or 4-pin, a 2-pin, even though it's running full speed all the time, may actually cost less money. So, but if you don't know how to do the math, and I don't know how to do the math for that, but if you don't know how to do the math, then just stick with a PWM fan with 0 RPMs. If it's a proprietary connector, you're going to have to look at the how much electricity is being used. And again, if you're trying to save money on electricity, don't get anything with lights, because that's just going to unnecessarily increase your electrical bills monthly cost. So that's pretty much all I needed to share with you regarding PWM versus DC. And if you do have questions, please feel free to put them down below. Please like, subscribe, share, whatever you feel comfortable with doing. You want to save it to a playlist on your channel. I would really appreciate the support in helping it grow my channel. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a great day.